Come on in, guys. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about 5 seasons of Survivor that new viewers should check out. Maybe you yourself are a new viewer, maybe you're trying to get a friend into Survivor, but with 40 seasons across 20 years, I totally get that it can be a little intimidating. I mean, let's be honest here. Not all seasons of Survivor are created equal. And while Survivor's like pizza, it's almost always good, you'd rather have a local artisanal pizza instead of Papa John's, right? Speaking of, what's with sweaty old men and ruining good things? I think a lot of viewing guides out there get too caught up in the nitty-gritty of making new viewers understand every teeny tiny reference, creating these giant lists of seasons you must watch before you can watch these other seasons, so you can better appreciate the character arcs and stuff like that. Or they might insist that you start at the beginning or near the beginning, so you can better appreciate the show's growth. And that's true, you will. But I think it's better to just get to the really good stuff right off the bat. You've got one chance to convert new fans. Don't blow it on giving them homework. Instead, watch any of these 5 seasons I'm about to recommend, which tend to start strong right out of the gate, have memorable heroes and villains, are exciting week to week, have alliances that are easy to track and to understand, and have a deserving, satisfying winner. I'm not going to put these seasons in any particular order, and there will be no spoilers at all. The footage will all be taken from the first few episodes of their respective seasons. And if I mention a particular player by name, that's no indication of their longevity in the game, just how memorable or entertaining they are. So feel free to watch through and pick out a season that appeals specifically to you. All that said, let's dig into 5 seasons of Survivor that newbies should totally check out. At number 5 is Season 28, Survivor Cagayan. During the pandemic, CBS added Cagayan, along with Heroes vs. Villains, to Netflix to hook new fans during our long layover between seasons that's mercifully ending soon. Obviously, CBS agrees that Cagayan is a great season to hook new viewers, and it is. If you've seen the season already, go ahead and skip ahead, but if not, I'd really recommend strolling over to Netflix for the best Survivor has to offer. This season is lightning in a bottle. From the twists, to the cast, to the boot order, every part of the season fits together perfectly to become so much more than the sum of its parts. Survivor's been chasing the Cagayan high for like 6 years now, hoping to recapture some of the magic that made this season so special in the first place, including repeating the brains versus brawn versus beauty theme a few seasons later, bringing back a whopping 6 contestants so far from this season to play again in future seasons, and even casting obvious carbon copies of one of the more popular players from this season in seasons 35 and 38. I call them clonies. This season is an absolute blast to watch with a partner or a friend and armchair quarterback the whole thing. From the frenetic pace to the creative weaponizing of immunity idols to the consistent jaw-dropping and sometimes baffling epic blindsides, it's super entertaining throughout. And the inspired casting ensures that we know and care about the people being eliminated. There's a reason a full third of this cast played again in subsequent seasons. It's a modern legend. Start here if you want to see the absolute best of modern Survivor. If you're not into it by the end of the second hour, I don't know what to tell you. You just don't like Survivor. Recommended for fans of Sonic the Hedgehog, llamas, and escaped mental patients. At number 4 is Season 25, Survivor Philippines. Philippines is such an interesting season in Survivor lore. It's in the midst of a period of time Survivor fans call the Dark Ages, widely agreed upon to be seasons 21 through 26, a period of time marred by lopsided editing favoring 1 or 2 big characters, bland casts, time-sucking twists, and generally questionable production decisions. It's the most skippable era, recommended for completionists only. Then there's Philippines right in the middle, a widely agreed upon high-tier season with none of those issues. Philippines has 3 tribes, each captained by a player who was previously removed from the game in a previous season via injury. So this will retroactively spoil the individual placements of 3 players in 3 previous seasons, so beware of that. However, you don't need to have seen their previous seasons at all to enjoy this one. Because those 3 players are from the old school era of Survivor, this season feels a bit like an old school season in a new school body. It's really the perfect combination of the more relationship-oriented strategy of older seasons and advantage-focused strategy in newer seasons, and it threads the needle of both quite well. Without giving too much away, the first 4 episodes could almost stand alone as their own mini-series separate from the rest of the season. It's the closest Survivor's ever come to a Greek tragedy. The cast is also dynamic and interesting without being over-the-top zany. There's the best man bun in Survivor history, chaos personified, a sex therapist from Iowa, a guy I saw in a grocery store one time, and okay, one dude who's a little zany. There's even 2 celebrities, Blair from The Facts of Life, and everyone's favorite mild-mannered second baseman, Jeff Kent. I'm usually not super in favor of having celebrities on Survivor, but these 2 bring so much to the season, I honestly can't imagine it without them. If you want something a little more thoughtful with a slightly slower pace, then Philippines is your season. Recommended for fans of Frankenstein, properly paying 40% tax on game show winnings, and Dementors. At number 3 is Season 15, Survivor China. So normally I wouldn't recommend a pre-HD season to start with, because these shows simply were not made with 64-inch 8K TVs in mind, and I think convincing someone to watch anything in standard definition is an increasingly tough sell. But the pre-HD seasons, particularly China, look so good streaming on Paramount Plus that you'll honestly forget that you're watching something shot in standard definition. Ignore that. The first thing you'll notice about Survivor China is its striking beauty. And I'm not just talking about James and Amanda. Rarely does a Survivor locale look this green and alive. It's just a total visual treat for the eyes. Before they permanently set up shop in Fiji, Survivor went to different locations each season, and while some seasons were more successful at utilizing their location than others, none did it better than Survivor China, which makes a meal out of the Chinese setting with creative challenges themed around Chinese history and culture, and rewards to breathtaking Chinese landmarks like the Shaolin Temple and the Great Wall. Each tribe is even given a copy of The Art of War and actually utilize it as a strategic guide. Of course, it's the players that make any season of Survivor great, and I probably sound like a broken record here, but China has one of the most memorable newbie casts in history. This is one of those rare seasons where I really came away feeling like I knew all 16 players as people. No one's invisible, and everyone's story is told in full. The strategy is a little old school, with alliances largely formed around initial tribal lines, but there's enough inter-alliance backstabbing and idle intrigue to keep the game interesting throughout. Survivor China was filmed during a time of creative rebirth for the show, and it shows in every facet, from the location to the theme to the cast. I don't know any Survivor fan that doesn't absolutely adore this season. So if you don't mind that it's not in high def, please go check it out. Recommended for fans of needlessly blurred bottoms, Susan Lucci, and Sudoku. At number 2 is Season 33, Survivor Millennials vs. Gen X. Are you a Gen Xer who hates lazy avocado-munching millennials? Are you a millennial who hates that Gen X completely abandoned their detached, ironic ethos and just became boomers? Then I've got a season for you. Survivor in the 30s was defined by these increasingly outlandish versus themes, pitting X group against Y group. And while they eventually got almost bizarrely abstract, Millennials vs. Gen X is a theme that's actually clear-cut and, more importantly, fun. So, points for that. Jeff's never had a better time leaning into a theme, as he calls upon the silliest stereotypes he can possibly imagine when interrogating the castaways about their millennialness or Gen Xiness. Like, you'll hear him ask the millennials how often they text the letter U instead of the word you quite often. It exemplifies the charming kitschiness that was Survivor in the 30s, a trend I think kicked off with this very season. One thing I love about Millennials vs. Gen X is it's the first time Survivor really took mental health issues seriously. There's no question that Survivor's got a questionable record on mental health, but this season's anchored by several players struggling with things probably most of us struggle with: anxiety and insecurity, and it's examined by the show in an empathetic and understanding way. There are also other storylines throughout the season that are genuinely touching, including a very moving story of one player's sick mother back home, and a beautiful on-island romance audiences are sure to fall in love with themselves. On the On the strategic end, this season is a blast to watch, with this cast of mostly superfans willing to take really big swings and take huge risks, even really early in the season. I'd say Millennials vs. Gen X will really appeal to people who don't mind a little cheese in their Survivor, people who want to see relatable players they can empathize with, and people who will get really into the theme of the season. Finally, we can get a definitive answer to which generation is the best. Recommended for fans of Dragon Queens, Milk, and Salt. At number 1 is Season 37, Survivor David vs. Goliath. David vs. Goliath was the final season to do a versus theme, and has, in my opinion, the best one of the 30s. Yeah, you thought they peaked with the clearly defined roles and expertly curated cast of heroes versus healers versus hustlers, but then along comes David vs. Goliath to blow it out of the water. I know a lot of people find this theme kinda hokey, but it becomes a lot more palatable if you just reframe it in your mind as a tribe of plucky underdogs versus a tribe of overachievers. Speaking of those underdogs and overachievers, this is a god-tier cast. For my money, one of the best casts ever assembled. The Goliath tribe features captains of industry, wildly successful entertainers, and expert negotiators. And the David tribe has a bunch of lovable nerds and blue-collar workers, including the most universally beloved Survivor player this side of Surrey Fields. It's a testament to the casting that a season where a whole tribe is just Herculean superhumans still manages to feel like one of the most real groups of people ever assembled to compete on this show. Speaking of competing, I know I've not mentioned challenges much this entire video because, for me at least, they're generally the least memorable part of any given episode. But I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this season features a challenge that is one of the best edited challenges in reality TV history. Anyone who's seen the season knows exactly the challenge I'm talking about. And guys, I'm known for my lack of hyperbole. My only real warning to new viewers is that this season has a bit of a slow start, including a very anticlimactic ending to episode 1. You've really got to wait until the 3rd episode for the season to truly pick up steam, but once it does, it never lets up. Personally, this is the season I usually recommend to people when they ask me what season of Survivor to watch, because it's the best season of at least the last 5 years, has positive vibes throughout, and still shows that Survivor can reach incredible highs 20 years on. It's a can't-miss modern classic. Recommended for fans of breadth first searches, Mr. Schneebly, and Reuben sandwiches. Got nothing else for ya. To help me become an artisanal pizza of Survivor YouTube, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.